The wind never lied in the Bighorn Mountains. It could whisper through the pine trees on a peaceful morning, roll gently across the open grasslands, or descend from the northern peaks with enough fury to tear roofs from cabins. Elijah Brooks had lived in Wyoming territory long enough to understand every warning hidden inside it. That afternoon, the wind told him to hurry home. The sky above Silver Creek had turned the color of cold iron. Heavy clouds gathered beyond the western ridge, swallowing the last traces of sunlight. Snowflakes already drifted across the road, small and harmless at first, but Elijah knew they would not remain that way for long. He tightened the rope around 2 sacks of flour tied behind his saddle. His horse, Ranger, shifted uneasily beneath him. "I know," Elijah murmured. "I don't like it either." The bay gelding flicked one ear toward his rider. Elijah pulled the collar of his wool coat higher and guided Ranger away from town. At 39, he had spent most of his adult life working cattle beneath the Wyoming sky. He owned a modest ranch near the mountains, far enough from Silver Creek that he could enjoy the silence, but close enough to trade when supplies ran low. His property was not impressive by the standards of wealthy ranchers. 30 cattle. 2 horses. A barn built from pine. A log cabin with a stone chimney. Every board, fence post, and roof beam had been placed by his own hands. Some people in Silver Creek called him the Black Cowboy from the ridge. Others used less respectful names when they thought he could not hear. Elijah had learned years ago that arguing with every cruel person only gave them more room inside his mind. So he worked. He kept his word. He helped travelers when their wagons broke. He returned lost cattle even when no reward was offered. Over time, most townspeople came to respect him. A few never would. Elijah had accepted that. The mountains judged a man by simpler standards. Could he survive winter? Could he protect his animals? Would he help another person when no one was watching? Those questions mattered more than the color of his skin. The snowfall grew heavier as Elijah climbed toward the northern trail. Within an hour, the road disappeared beneath a blanket of white. Wind swept across the open slopes, erasing Ranger's tracks almost as soon as he made them. Elijah leaned forward in the saddle. "We're taking the lower pass." The main route crossed an exposed ridge where a man could freeze before realizing he had lost the trail. The lower path wound between dense trees and added several miles, but it offered protection from the worst gusts. Ranger turned obediently. They had traveled no more than half a mile when the horse suddenly stopped. Elijah waited. "Come on." Ranger did not move. Instead, he lowered his head toward the snow beside the path. Elijah studied the surrounding trees. There was no wolf. No fallen branch. Nothing except white drifts and dark pine trunks. He gently pressed his heels against Ranger's sides. The gelding took one step, then stopped again. Something was wrong. Elijah climbed down. Snow reached nearly to his knees. It had fallen too quickly, covering any tracks that might have explained the horse's behavior. He moved toward the edge of the trail. At first, he saw nothing. Then a dark strand moved beneath the wind. Hair. Elijah rushed forward and dropped to one knee. A young woman lay curled beneath the snow. Her clothing had almost disappeared under the drift. She wore a pale dress beneath a thin gray coat that offered little protection against the cold. Ice clung to her long black hair. Her face had lost nearly all its color. Elijah tore off one glove and pressed 2 fingers against her neck. For several terrifying seconds, he felt nothing. Then a weak pulse touched his fingertips. "Miss?" Her eyelids did not move. He brushed snow away from her mouth and leaned close enough to detect the faintest breath. She was alive. Barely. Elijah pulled off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her body. Then he lifted her into his arms. She was frighteningly light. Not merely small. Underfed. Her cheeks were hollow, and one wrist showed beneath the sleeve, thin enough that Elijah could nearly circle it with his hand. As he carried her toward Ranger, she whispered something. Elijah stopped. "What did you say?" Her lips moved again. "Please," the word was so faint that the wind nearly stole it. "Please don't, take me back." Her head fell against his chest. Elijah looked toward the empty trail behind them. "Take her back where?" He saw no wagon. No traveling party. No sensible reason a young Chinese woman should be alone in the mountains during a blizzard. Questions would have to wait. He placed her carefully across Ranger's saddle, climbed behind her, and held her upright against his chest. Silver Creek had a doctor, but town was more than 2 hours away in good weather. His cabin was much closer. Elijah tightened the reins. "Home, Ranger." The storm struck with full force during the climb. Wind howled between the trees. Snow blinded them. Twice Ranger lost his footing on the hidden trail, and both times Elijah steadied the woman before she slipped from the saddle. Her body remained cold against him. He spoke whenever her breathing became too shallow. "Stay with me." No response. "You didn't survive this long to quit now." Ranger pushed onward. By the time the cabin appeared through the storm, Elijah's beard had frozen white. He dismounted beside the porch, carried the woman inside, and kicked the door shut behind him. Warmth still lingered in the room from the morning fire. He placed her on the bed and immediately added wood to the stove. Flames climbed through the dry pine, filling the cabin with light. Elijah had treated frostbite before. Cowboys sometimes became stranded. Travelers underestimated Wyoming winters. He knew warming her too quickly could cause more harm. He removed her frozen outer coat but left her dress in place, preserving her dignity. Then he wrapped her in dry blankets and placed heated stones near her feet and sides. Her boots were soaked. When he pulled them off, he discovered bruises around her ankles. Not injuries from a fall. Marks from rope or shackles. Elijah stared at them for a long moment. Then he covered her feet. He warmed broth on the stove and sat beside the bed, waiting for any sign of consciousness. Hours passed. Outside, the storm battered the cabin. Inside, Ranger and the other animals remained secured in the barn, while Elijah watched the strangers. Face by lamplight. Near midnight, she began shivering violently. It was the first hopeful sign. He supported her head and brought a spoonful of warm broth to her lips. Slowly. Most of it spilled onto the blanket. The next spoonful stayed down. After several attempts, her eyes finally opened. They were dark brown, clouded by exhaustion and fear. The moment she saw Elijah, she tried to pull away. "You're safe," he said. Her gaze darted toward the door. "Where am I?" "My ranch. North of Silver Creek." She attempted to sit up, but weakness forced her back onto the pillow. "How long?" "A few hours. I found you near the lower trail." Memory returned to her face. Her breathing quickened. "My bag. I didn't see one." The papers. She searched the blanket as if the missing object might be hidden beneath it. Elijah raised one hand. "You need to rest." She looked directly at him. "Are you going to return me?" "To whom?" Her expression closed. Elijah did not press. "No one owns you inside this house," he said. "Whatever you're running from can wait until morning." Tears gathered in her eyes, but she quickly looked away. "My name is Mei Lin Zhao. Elijah Brooks." She repeated his name quietly, as though committing it to memory. "Why did you stop?" "My horse stopped first." That almost brought a smile to her face. Almost. Elijah gave her another spoonful of broth. She swallowed. "What happens tomorrow?" she asked. "We see whether the storm has passed." "And after that?" "That depends on what you want." Mei Lin studied him carefully. She was clearly unaccustomed to being asked. Before she could answer, exhaustion pulled her eyes closed. Elijah remained beside the bed until her breathing became steady. At dawn, the storm finally weakened. He stepped onto the porch. Fresh snow covered the valley, smooth and untouched beneath the gray morning sky. Then he saw something near the tree line. Horse tracks. 3 riders had approached the ranch during the night. They had stopped close enough to observe the cabin. Then turned back toward the lower trail. Someone had been looking for Mei Lin. And now they knew exactly where she was. Mei Lin remained in bed for 3 days. Fever came and went. She spoke little, answering only when Elijah asked whether she needed water, food, or another blanket. He never questioned her about the bruises on her ankles. He did not mention the riders. Instead, he tended the cattle, repaired a section of roof damaged by the storm, and left the bedroom door partly open so she would not feel trapped. On the 4th morning, he found her standing beside the stove. She wore the pale dress from the day he rescued her. The fabric had dried, revealing delicate stitching around the collar. The garment had once been beautiful, but its hem was torn and stained from travel. Mei Lin gripped the table for support. "You should be resting," Elijah said. "I have rested enough. You nearly froze to death. And you have worked alone while I occupied your bed. It's the only bed. That makes it worse." Elijah poured coffee into a cup. "You can repay me by sitting down before you fall." Mei Lin hesitated, then obeyed. He placed bread, eggs, and fried potatoes before her. She ate slowly at first, maintaining careful manners despite her hunger. Within minutes, restraint gave way to need. Elijah looked toward the window so she would not feel watched. When the plate was empty, she folded her hands. "I worked at a laundry outside Rock Springs," she began. The owner was named Silas Vane. Elijah remained quiet. He recruited Chinese workers from the railroad camps. He said we would earn wages and receive shelter. But once we arrived, he claimed we owed him for transportation, food, clothing, and every night we slept under his roof. Debt labor. She nodded. The debt grew no matter how much we worked. Some people had contracts. Others could not read the papers they signed. "What about you?" "My older brother borrowed money from Vane. When he disappeared, Vane said the debt belonged to me." Elijah's jaw tightened. "You didn't sign anything?" "No, then he had no legal claim. Men like him do not need the law when everyone is afraid." She described working from before sunrise until late at night, washing clothes in boiling water until her hands cracked and bled. Those who resisted were locked in a storage building without food. 2 weeks earlier, a worker named Chen had discovered that Vane kept falsified records in a locked office. Mei Lin stole several pages proving the debts were invented. She intended to bring them to a federal official in Sheridan. Someone discovered her before she could leave. Mei Lin escaped during the night with the papers hidden in a cloth bag. She boarded a freight wagon, jumped off near Silver Creek, and continued on foot. When the blizzard came, she lost both the trail and the bag. "I thought I was going to die," she said. Elijah leaned back in his chair. "Vane sent the riders." "Yes. Would he hurt you?" Her silence answered. Elijah stood. Mei Lin immediately looked toward him. "What are you doing?" "Checking the barn." She knew that was not the full truth. "Elijah." He stopped at the door. "You saved my life," she said. "You do not owe me anything else. I'm aware. If those men return, let me go with them." He turned slowly. "So they can lock you up again? So they do not burn your home?" Elijah stepped closer to the table. "This ranch survived drought, wildfire, and men who wanted me gone before I finished building the roof. I'm not surrendering a frightened woman because 3 cowards rode past my trees. Her eyes filled with confusion. Why? Because wrong does not become right simply because defending it is dangerous. That afternoon, Mei Lin insisted on helping. Elijah found her mending his work shirt beside the window. Her stitches were small and precise. You don't have to do that. The sleeve was torn. It has been torn for 6 months. Then you have ignored it for 6 months. There was a quiet sharpness in her reply. Elijah smiled. It was the first time Mei Lin saw him do so. Over the next week, strength returned to her body. She began feeding the chickens each morning. She swept the cabin, prepared rice from a small bag Elijah had purchased in town, and repaired an old quilt he had planned to throw away. The cabin changed. A jar of pine branches appeared on the table. Fresh bread replaced hard biscuits. A red strip of cloth was tied near the window, a small Chinese tradition Mei Lin said invited good fortune into a home. Elijah did not believe fabric controlled luck. He left it there anyway. Their conversations became easier. He told her about his childhood in Missouri, his years driving cattle, and the wife he had lost to illness 7 winters earlier. Mei Lin shared memories of her mother teaching her embroidery in California, her father's vegetable garden, and the lanterns her family once hung during Lunar New Year. Neither tried to fill every silence. That was what made their companionship comfortable. One clear afternoon, Elijah brought Ranger outside. You need to learn to ride. Mei Lin eyed the large horse. He appears taller than he did during the storm. He likes you. How can you tell? He hasn't tried to bite you. Ranger turned his head toward Elijah. Mei Lin laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Elijah showed her how to hold the reins and place her foot in the stirrup. When she struggled to mount, he put one hand at her waist and helped lift her into the saddle. For a moment, neither moved. His palm rested against her side. Her hands settled on his shoulders. Then Elijah stepped back. Mei Lin looked away, but a trace of warmth colored her cheeks. By sunset, she could guide Ranger around the corral without assistance. The next morning, 3 riders approached the ranch. Silas Vane rode in the center. He was a thick-bodied man in an expensive black coat, with polished boots that looked absurd against the mud. A narrow-faced deputy rode on his right. The third man carried a rifle across his lap. Elijah met them outside the fence. Mei Lin stood inside the cabin, watching through the curtain. Vane smiled. Mr. Brooks. Elijah did not return the greeting. You came onto my land during the storm. I was searching for stolen property. She is not property. Vane's smile faded. The woman calling herself Mei Lin Zhao is under contract to me. Show it. Vane removed a folded document from his coat. Elijah read it carefully. The contract claimed Mei Lin had agreed to 7 years of labor in exchange for repayment of family debt. A signature resembling her name appeared at the bottom. She says she never signed this. Of course she does. The deputy shifted in his saddle. Mr. Brooks, we're trying to resolve this peacefully. Then investigate the document. It appears valid. Elijah looked at him. Appears valid is not the same as being valid. Vane leaned forward. I'm giving you one opportunity. Bring her outside, and this ends without difficulty. The cabin door opened. Mei Lin stepped onto the porch. Her posture was calm, but Elijah saw fear in the way she held her hands. Vane's eyes hardened. You caused considerable trouble. You falsified my signature, she said. I housed you. Fed you. You imprisoned me. The deputy looked uncomfortable. Vane pointed toward the road. You're coming back. Elijah moved between them. No, the rifleman shifted his weapon. Elijah's hand lowered near his revolver, though he did not draw. For several seconds, the ranch became completely still. Then the deputy spoke. "Vane, not here." Vane studied Elijah with open hatred. "You think this town will choose your word over mine? This isn't about my word. No. It's about what people see when they look at you." Elijah's expression never changed. Vane turned his horse. "We'll return with a proper order." The riders disappeared down the trail. Mei Lin came to the fence. "You should have let them take me." Elijah faced her. "Do you want to go?" "No, then the matter is settled." "It is not settled. Vane will return. Then we prepare." That night, smoke appeared in the southern sky. A wagon carrying the Dalton family had overturned near a frozen creek. Their eldest boy reached the ranch on foot, half frozen and desperate. Elijah saddled Ranger immediately. Mei Lin grabbed a blanket and medical supplies. "You're staying here. The mother may need help. It's dark. I survived a blizzard. Barely. And I know what it feels like to wait in the snow while believing no one is coming." Elijah could not argue with that. They rode together. The Dalton wagon lay on its side beneath a steep bank. The father's leg was trapped under a wheel. His wife held two crying children beneath a torn canvas. Elijah used a rope and Ranger's strength to lift the wagon enough to free Mr. Dalton. Mei Lin wrapped the children in blankets and calmed them with a song in Chinese. The family spent the night at Elijah's cabin. By morning, word of the rescue had reached Silver Creek. The story spread quickly. The Chinese woman Vane called a runaway prisoner had helped save two children. The black cowboy some people still distrusted had risked his life in freezing darkness for a family that could offer him nothing. Public opinion began to shift. Vane noticed. 4 days later, he returned with the sheriff. This time, he carried a territorial court order. Unless Elijah could prove the contract was fraudulent, Mei Lin would be taken into custody before sunset. Sheriff Walter Grady was not a cruel man, but he believed order mattered more than instinct. He stood inside Elijah's cabin with the document laid across the table. "I don't like Vane," he admitted. "But this bears a witness seal and a signature." Mei Lin stared at the paper. "That is not my writing. Can you prove it?" Her hand moved toward the small carved pendant hanging at her neck. "My mother taught me to sign my name in both Chinese and English. I never write the letters that way." Vane stood near the door. "Convenient." Elijah examined the witness seal. It belonged to a notary in Rock Springs named Harold Finch. "Is Finch alive?" he asked. The sheriff nodded. "As far as I know." "Then send a telegram." Vane laughed. "You're delaying." "I'm verifying." Sheriff Grady considered it. "The station closes in 2 hours. I'll ride." Mei Lin touched Elijah's arm. "The road is still covered with ice. That's why Ranger has 4 legs." He reached Silver Creek before the telegraph office closed. The operator sent a message to Rock Springs requesting confirmation of the contract's date, seal, and signatories. No reply came that evening. The sheriff agreed to wait until noon the following day. Vane remained at the hotel, confident the evidence would support him. That night, someone set fire to Elijah's barn. Mei Lin woke first. "Elijah." Flames climbed the eastern wall. He rushed outside in his trousers and boots, releasing the horses before smoke filled the stalls. Mei Lin formed a bucket line with the Dalton family and 2 neighboring ranchers who had arrived after seeing the glow. They fought the fire until dawn. Half the barn was destroyed. One corner had been soaked with kerosene. This was no accident. Sheriff Grady found boot prints leading toward the road, but melting snow made them impossible to follow. Vane denied involvement. At 11 the next morning, the telegram arrived. Harold Finch had died 3 years earlier. The contract was dated 8 months ago. Sheriff Grady read the message twice. Then he removed his hat and looked at Mei Lin. "You're free." Vane attempted to leave town. The sheriff arrested him before he reached the livery stable. A search of Vane's wagon uncovered account books, forged contracts, and a cloth bag Mei Lin had lost in the storm. Inside were the copied records proving he had invented debts for dozens of workers. Federal officials arrived within a week. Vane and 2 associates were taken east to stand trial. For the first time in years, Mei Lin could decide where she wanted to go. Elijah expected her to choose California. She had relatives there. A familiar community. A chance to begin again somewhere without painful memories. He helped repair her traveling bag. He purchased a train ticket with money he claimed she could repay someday, though both understood he would never ask. On the morning of her departure, he drove her to the Silver Creek station. Neither said much. Snow had begun to melt, revealing brown grass beneath the white fields. Elijah carried her bag to the platform. "The train stops in Rawlins," he said. "You'll change there." "I remember." "Keep the ticket inside your coat." "I will." "And don't trust anyone who offers work before explaining the wages." Mei Lin looked at him. "You have given me that advice 3 times. It remains good advice." A distant whistle echoed across the valley. Elijah handed her the bag. "I suppose this is where we say goodbye." Mei Lin held the handle but did not take it. "Is that what you want?" The question caught him unprepared. "What I want doesn't matter." "It matters to me." Passengers gathered near the tracks. Elijah glanced toward them, then back at her. "You deserve a life that isn't built around running from danger. And you believe I cannot have that here? I believe Silver Creek has not always treated people like us kindly." "People like us?" "A black man. A Chinese woman. You know what they'll say." Mei Lin stepped closer. "I know what they already say." The train appeared around the bend. Its wheels struck the rails with increasing force. Elijah's voice became quieter. "I don't want gratitude mistaken for love." She held his gaze. "Then do not mistake love for gratitude." The train stopped. Doors opened. Travelers climbed aboard. The conductor called for final passengers. Mei Lin took the ticket from inside her coat. She looked at it. Then tore it in half. Elijah stared. "What are you doing?" "Making a choice. You may regret it." "I have regretted many things. Trusting you will not be one of them." The conductor shouted again. Mei Lin let the torn pieces fall into a nearby bin. "I do not want to return to California," she said. "I do not want another employer, another borrowed room, or another place where I must ask permission to remain." "What do you want?" She smiled softly. "A home." Elijah's expression shifted. The guarded man who had faced storms, prejudice, and loneliness without complaints suddenly looked uncertain. "I have a cabin," he said. "I know. It needs another chair. I can build one. The roof leaks near the back wall. Then we repair it." He lowered his eyes toward her hand. Slowly, he took it. They returned to the ranch together. Spring came late that year. Elijah rebuilt the barn with help from families across Silver Creek. Mei Lin opened a small sewing room beside the general store, where she repaired work clothes, made dresses, and eventually employed 2 Chinese women freed from Vane's labor camp. The red ribbon remained near the cabin window. A second chair appeared on the porch. By summer, flowers grew beside the front steps. Elijah and Mei Lin married beneath a cottonwood tree near the creek. Sheriff Grady served as witness. The Dalton children scattered wildflowers along the path. Ranger stood tied nearby, wearing a small red ribbon around his bridle. Years passed. The cabin expanded. Travelers caught in storms always found food, blankets, and a warm fire at the Brooks Ranch. One winter, Elijah and Mei Lin took in an orphaned girl named Anna after illness claimed her parents. What began as temporary shelter became permanent family. On the first warm day of spring, 3 years after the blizzard, they rode to the lower trail. The snow had disappeared. Wildflowers covered the slope where Elijah had once found Mei Lin buried beneath ice. Anna ran ahead, laughing as she chased yellow butterflies. Mei Lin stood beside Elijah and looked across the valley. "Do you remember the question I asked when I woke in your cabin? You asked whether I would return you. Before that." Elijah thought for a moment. "Why I stopped?" She nodded. He watched Anna kneel among the flowers. "Ranger stopped first." Mei Lin smiled. "You still use the horse to avoid answering." Elijah took her hand. "I stopped because leaving you there would have followed me for the rest of my life." "And staying?" He looked at the woman who had transformed a lonely cabin into a home. "Staying gave me the life I didn't know I was waiting for." They returned before sunset. Golden light stretched across the ranch. Anna ran toward the porch. Smoke rose peacefully from the chimney. Fresh bread cooled near the open window. Cattle grazed beyond the fence, and the red ribbon moved gently in the spring breeze. Beside the gate stood a wooden sign Elijah had carved by hand. It carried only one word. Home. Once, Mei Lin had believed survival meant escaping the people who claimed to own her. Elijah had believed strength meant needing no one. They were both wrong. Survival was being found when the world had nearly forgotten you. Strength was opening the door even when danger might follow. And love was not rescue alone. It was the decision to remain after the storm had passed. Elijah had found Mei Lin frozen beneath the snow. But in refusing to leave her behind, he had also found the family he thought he had lost forever.